Alex, people think the lifeblood of a shop is the electricity or the caffeine in the pot at 6 a.m. But once you go pneumatic, you realize the real soul of the place is moving through those little blue tubes. Compressed air is like having a dozen invisible apprentices who never complain about splinters.
Well, invisible apprentices that make a heck of a lot of noise anyway. My little pancake compressor sounds like a skeleton having a seizure in a trash can. Is it really worth the ringing ears just to blow some dust off a joint?
Oh, if you're just using it as a fancy bellows, you're missing the feast. I'm talking about impact wrenches that make rusted bolts give up their lunch money, or spray guns that lay down a finish so smooth it looks like liquid glass. But the transition from a portable unit to a real system, that's where the drama starts. I remember my first real install. I thought I could just run flexible PVC hose all over the rafters like Christmas lights.
Let me guess, it didn't end with a ribbon-cutting ceremony.
It ended with a sound like a gunshot and me ducking behind a table saw while 30 feet of plastic whipped around the room like an angry cobra. PVC and compressed air live in a state of mutual loathing. When it fails, it doesn't just leak, it shatters into plastic shrapnel. That was a check your underwear kind of afternoon.
Okay, so no PVC. Glad we established that before I went to the big box store. But for those of us who aren't trying to power a NASA wind tunnel, where do we actually start? How do you size these things without needing a PhD in fluid dynamics?
It's all about the big three: CFM, PSI, and tank size. Most folks stare at the horsepower rating on the sticker, which is usually a marketing department having a creative writing exercise. But CFM is the only number that won't lie to your face.
CFM, cubic feet per minute, that's the actual breath of the machine, right?
Exactly. Think of PSI, pounds per square inch, as the muscle and CFM as the lungs. You can have all the muscle in the world, but if you can't breathe, you're going to pass out halfway through the job. If you're running a sandblaster or a rotary sander, those things are absolute air gluttons. They'll eat 15 CFM and ask what's for dessert. If your compressor only puts out 5 CFM, you'll spend 10 minutes waiting for the tank to refill for every 30 seconds of work. It's a frustrating way to live.
So if I'm just airing up tires and the occasional nail gun, I'm fine with a basic unit. But if I want to paint my truck or restore that old cast iron lathe, I need to look at something beefier. What about those 2-stage units I see in the catalogs?
Now we're talking. A single-stage compressor squashes the air once and shoves it in the tank. A 2-stage unit is a bit more sophisticated. It compresses it, sends it through a cooling tube, and then squashes it again to get 175 psi or more. It's more efficient, and generally, the pump runs at a lower RPM. That's the secret to a quiet shop. A slow-turning, heavy cast iron pump has a low, rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat. Those high-speed oilless units, those sound like a blender full of marbles.
That Eaton unit you've got there is beautiful, Tiger. But you mentioned something about putting it in a crawl space. You're telling me you banished your invisible apprentice to the basement?
I did, and it was the best thing I ever did for my sanity. But you can't just shove a machine in a hole and forget it. Compressors are like humans. They need to breathe and they get hot when they work. If you put one in a tiny, unventilated closet, it'll cook itself. I had to rig up a ventilation fan that kicks on with the compressor.
Is that why your shop is so eerily quiet? I was wondering how we were recording this without a jackhammer going off every 10 minutes.
Precisely. But here's the kicker of a remote install: the plumbing. You can't just use any old garden hose to bring that air upstairs. I went with black iron pipe. It's traditional, it's tough, and frankly, it makes the shop look like a Victorian steam plant.
Black iron sounds like a lot of work. Cutting threads, using those massive pipe wrenches. Isn't there a modern way that doesn't involve me smelling like cutting oil for a week?
Oh, there are plenty of ways to skin that cat now. You've got copper, which is great for cooling the air and dropping moisture out, but soldering it is an art form. Then there's PEX, specifically the kits like Rapid Air. They use these push-to-connect fittings and flexible nylon tubing. It's basically Legos for adults. You can plumb a whole shop in a Saturday afternoon.
Any downside to the Lego method? Or is it all sunshine and rainbows?
Well, nylon can get a bit saggy if the shop gets hot, and it doesn't dissipate heat as well as metal. See, when you compress air, it gets hot. Hot air holds water. If you don't cool that air down in the pipes before it hits your tool, you're basically pressure washing your expensive pneumatic sander with hot steam.
Which I'm guessing is a great way to turn pneumatic tool into paperweight via rust.
You've got it. That's why I'm a fanatic about drip legs. No matter what pipe you use, you want your drops, the parts that go down to your tools, to come off the top of the main line. Think of a T-junction pointing up. The water stays in the bottom of the main pipe and runs down to a drain valve while the clean, dry air goes up and over to your tool. If you take the air off the bottom of the pipe, you're just drinking the dregs of the pond.
Okay, let's talk about the wet problem. Even with drip legs, I've seen guys with these huge canisters hanging off their walls. Are we talking filters or dryers?
Both. It's a hierarchy of cleanliness. First, you have a separator. That's just a bowl that spins the air and flings the big water drops to the side. Then you've got filters that catch the microscopic junk. But if you're doing high-end woodwork or painting, you need an air dryer. Some use desiccant beads, basically high-tech kitty litter, and some are actual refrigerated units that act like a tiny air conditioner for your airlines.
A refrigerator for air. That feels like peak tool nerd.
It's glorious. You can pull the trigger on a blowgun, and it feels like a crisp autumn breeze. No droplets, no oily mist, just pure, dry power.
Speaking of oily mist, I've heard you have to oil your tools, but then you're saying you want the air clean. How do those two coexist?
That's the tightrope walk. You want the air in your pipes to be bone dry and oil-free. Once it gets to the tool, then you add the oil. For a nail gun, you just pop a drop in the intake every morning. For a big stationary tool, you can install an inline lubricator. But here's the rookie mistake. Never, ever use a hose for painting that has ever seen a drop of oil.
Oh, because the oil gets in the paint and the finish looks like a topographical map of the moon?
Worse, fish eyes. Tiny little craters where the paint refuses to stick. I have one hose marked with red tape that is my holy hose. It has never touched an oiler, and it never will. If someone uses it to run an impact wrench, they're banned from the den for a month.
I'll make sure to stay away from the red tape. So we've got the compressor, the piping, the moisture management. What about the leaks? Every shop I've been in has that faint hiss in the background.
That hiss is the sound of your money evaporating. I once did the math. A 1/16 inch hole in a line at 100 PS, I will leak about 6 CFM. That's enough to keep a small compressor running constantly just to maintain the status quo. I spent a whole weekend recently with a spray bottle of soapy water, hunting down bubbles like a man possessed.
Did you find the culprit?
It's always the quick connect fittings. Those little O-rings inside die a slow death. Or someone uses the wrong thread sealant. Don't even get me started on Teflon tape. Half the time, folks wrap it the wrong way, and it just gets shredded and shoved into the valves. Use a good quality pipe dope. It's messy, it smells like a chemical plant, but it actually seals.
All right, Tiger, let's get into the weeds for the people who are ready to pull the trigger. If I'm looking at a 60-gallon tank, which seems to be the sweet spot for a serious hobbyist, what am I looking for in terms of maintenance to make sure this thing doesn't explode in 10 years?
Number 1, drain the tank. Every single day. When you compress air, you're squeezing out gallons of water over time. That water sits at the bottom of the steel tank and starts chewing through it. I've seen tanks that looked fine on the outside, but when we cut them open, the bottom was as thin as a soda can.
That sounds like a ticking time bomb.
It literally is. I installed an automatic electronic drain valve on mine. It opens for 2 seconds every hour and makes a sound like a startled dragon. Pfft. But it means my tank is dry as a bone. Also, change the oil in the pump. A lot of people think air compressors are like refrigerators. You just plug them in and forget them. But that pump is an engine. It needs fresh oil once a year or whenever it starts looking like chocolate milk from the moisture.
Chocolate milk oil. That's a visual I didn't need.
It happens, especially in humid climates. And check your intake filters. If your compressor's in the shop, it's sucking in sawdust. A clogged filter makes the pump work twice as hard and run hotter. It's a 5-minute fix that saves you a $1,000 motor.
Okay, let's wrap this up with a reality check. Total cost for someone to go from pancake compressor and a cheap hose to a properly plumbed shop system. Are we talking selling a kidney money?
Not quite. You can get a solid 60-gallon compressor for about $800 to $1,200. A Rapid Air PEX kit is maybe $100. Toss in another $200 for a decent filter regurgitator and some good hoses. You're looking at about $1,500 for a system that will last you 30 years. Compare that to buying a new cheap portable unit every 4 years because the motor burned out. It's a bargain.
And the payoff is a quiet shop and tools that actually do what they're supposed to do.
Precisely. There's a certain feeling when you pull that air hose down from the ceiling reel, click it onto a tool, and you know you've got the full power of a 5-horsepower beast behind you. It's like the difference between driving a moped and a muscle car.
I think I know what my next project is, though I might skip the crawl space install and just build a very, very thick soundproof box.
Just don't forget the fan, Alex. Nobody likes a toasted motor.
Noted. Any final Tiger wisdom for the road?
Just one thing. When you're done for the day, turn off the power to the compressor. I once had a hose burst at 3 a.m. The compressor ran for 5 hours straight trying to fill the room with air. I woke up to a motor so hot it had melted the plastic belt guard.
There's the Tiger disaster I was waiting for.
We learn the hard way so they don't have to. It's all part of the job.
See you next time in the den.
Keep your blades sharp and your air dry, folks.